Tonight's story begins deep in the suffocating jungles of Vietnam, where 5 men have become phantoms, holding their breath as enemy soldiers pass close enough to touch. It's a tale of the Australian SAS, the jungle ghosts, who faced an impossible task, to win a war not with firepower, but with absolute, weaponized silence. What unfolds will reveal the terrifying discipline of men who didn't speak for weeks, expose the psychological warfare that shattered an enemy's will, and uncover the humbling lesson that the quietest soldiers can be the most lethal. Before we begin this journey together, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this story with someone who understands that true strength often lies in silence, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The humid air clung like a wet rag to Sergeant Jack Reaper Crowskin. High above, the monsoon rains lashed the triple canopy, but on the jungle floor of Phước Tuy province, the world was a damp, suffocating vault. It was October 21, 1968, the 9th day of their patrol. And in 9 days, Crow had not uttered a single sound. Not a whisper when they discovered the weapons cache on day 3. Not a gasp when Lance Corporal Evans had signaled the approach of an NVA company on day 6. Not a curse when the leeches found their way into his boots on day 7. And not now, as he watched through a veil of ferns while 6 enemy soldiers paused to light cigarettes just 2 meters from his hide, so close he could count the stitching on their packs and smell the nuoc mam on their uniforms. His left hand moved, a subtle gesture his men knew by heart. 2 fingers to the eyes, I see them. Then a flat palm pressed downward. Hold. Become nothing. Behind him, for shapes dissolved into the earth and vegetation. No rustle of fabric, no click of a safety, no sharp intake of breath. The NVA troops joked casually, one slapping another on the back, their rifles hanging loosely from their shoulders. They were utterly unaware that 5 Australian specters had been shadowing their unit for over a week, cataloging their strength, their routes, their very habits. What these soldiers couldn't comprehend, a miscalculation that would soon prove fatal for dozens of their comrades, was that this absolute quiet was not merely a procedure. It was their primary armament. The Australians had honed it into a tactical art form the jungle had never witnessed, the power to simply cease to be, transforming into unseen, unheard phantoms who gathered intelligence with predatory patience, revealing their presence only at the moment of execution. When the first Australian SAS patrols fanned out into Phước Tuy province in 1966, their American allies viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. The Yanks thought we were mad, recalled Corporal Frank Dinger, Bell of 2 Squadron. 5 blokes, 10 days in the bush, no resupply, and a vow of silence? They saw it as a suicide pact, not a reconnaissance mission. The American war machine was built on a doctrine of overwhelming force. Its signature was noise, the thunderous whump 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 of Huey rotors, the earth-shattering crash of 155mm artillery, and the constant crackle of radio traffic. It was a steel elephant crashing through the forest, announcing its presence for miles. The Australians waged a different war, a philosophy honed in the jungles of Malaya and Borneo. As Major Peter the Preacher Croft explained, the American objective was to find and destroy the enemy with superior firepower. Our objective was to find the enemy without him ever knowing we existed. We would learn everything about him, and then we would decide his fate. The crucial point was that he remained oblivious. This philosophy birthed their ultimate weapon, absolute silence. The concept was simple, yet its execution was brutal. 5-man patrols would insert deep into enemy territory, moving perhaps only 500 meters a day. They communicated through an elaborate language of hand signals, practiced until they were instinct. For up to 2 weeks, they operated without resupply, their existence reduced to a whisper of movement. The first time I heard the plan, I thought they were taking the piss, said Private Tim, Tiny Walsh. 10 days without a word, Aussies can't manage 10 minutes. Without some cheek. But when you understood the why, it was pure genius. The logic was inescapable. The Viet Cong and NVA owned the jungle. They were the fish in Mao's proverbial sea. The only possible advantage was to become something even the water couldn't feel, to become quieter than the enemy himself. "The jungle is your greatest ally, but a fickle one," stated Squadron Sergeant Major Silent Sam Healy. "It will hide you, but the moment you make a sound that doesn't belong, a cough, a whispered word, a scraping mess tin, you've just told every VC for 100 meters exactly where you are. At that point, you're not a hunter. You're a target." This wasn't a new tactic, but a refined art. Its roots stretched back to the Malayan emergency, where British and Australian forces learned that large sweeps were useless against a ghost-like enemy. Small, silent patrols were the answer. "Malaya taught us the jungle is neutral," said Captain Roy the Professor Bennett. "It will hide you or expose you based on how you move. The SAS showed us that if you slow down and become part of the environment, the enemy will walk right past you." The standard SAS patrol was a masterpiece of minimalism. 5 men, each with a sacred role. The patrol commander, the brain. The 2IC, his shadow and successor. The medic, a self-contained hospital. The signaler, the tenuous link to the world. The scout, the eyes and ears at the tip of the spear. 5 was the magic number, small enough to vanish, large enough to fight. American LRRPs used 6 to 8 men. The Australians calculated that 1 less man meant 1 less footprint, 1 less source of noise, 1 less chance of compromise. Training was obsessive. At their base in Nui Dat, patrols practiced their silent language for months. "We had a signal for everything," recalled Sergeant Ian Eyes McPherson. "Enemy, ahead, prepare ambush. I need to take a shit." That last one was vital. Even natural bodily functions had to be coordinated without a sound. Equipment was meticulously sanitized. Dog tags were rubber-wrapped, ammunition pouches packed tight to prevent rattling, and canteens filled only 2/3 to stop the telltale slosh. "We'd shake each other down before a patrol," said Trooper Kevin Mousy Jones. "If anything made a noise, it got fixed or left behind. It was that simple." The theory was proven in the relentless humidity of Phước Tuy. The operation that cemented the legend began with a farmer's tip about unusual activity near the abandoned village of Long Phước. In August 1966, Sergeant Tom the Priest Walsh and his 4-man team were sent to investigate. Inserted by helicopter, they watched the Huey disappear, its rotor wash fading into an oppressive, all-consuming silence. For 2 days, they covered less than a kilometer. The scout would take 3 painstaking steps, then stop, listen, and absorb the jungle. They moved with a heel-to-toe roll, avoiding every dry leaf and twig. On the 3rd day, they found it, a military highway, 2 meters wide, hard-packed by thousands of boots. Walsh's hand went up. The patrol froze. His assessment was swift. A company-sized element, over 100 men, had passed through recently. His hands flickered signals. Enemy. Large. Hide. They melted into the undergrowth and began their watch. For 48 hours, they counted over 300 Viet Cong moving south along the trail. It was like watching an ant colony, remembered medic Corporal Stitches O'Malley. Porters, soldiers, officers with maps. And they had no clue we were 20 meters away, counting every one of them. The ultimate test came when an NVA patrol stopped to rest directly in front of their position. For 6 hours, enemy soldiers smoked, laughed, and ate within arm's reach. "I had a mosquito land on my eyelid," Trooper Spider Webb recalled. "It bit me, drew blood. I didn't flinch. You just let it happen. One twitch, and we were all dead." That was the discipline. On day 6, they discovered the prize, a massive regimental headquarters, complete with bunkers, a field hospital, and supply caches. Walsh's signaler sent a brief, in coded whisper over the radio. The intelligence was a gold mine, directly influencing the planning for what would become the Battle of Long Tan. After 8 full days of silence, as the extraction helicopter finally roared overhead, Walsh spoke his first words, "Go, go, go." This success created a template, but the enemy adapted. The VC began issuing warnings about the Marung, the jungle ghosts. They booby-trapped trails and increased patrols. The Australians, in turn, became even more phantom-like. They pioneered false insertions, where helicopters would touch down multiple times without deploying anyone, creating a shell game for enemy observers. They perfected moving like smoke, advancing so slowly that disturbed vegetation had time to settle behind them. American teams covered 5 clicks a day, explained Corporal Dave the Snail Anderson. We do one. Speed compromises security. We chose security every time. This created a psychological weapon. Enemy forces never knew if they were being watched. A captured NVA officer later confessed the Americans were predictable, but the Australians, we never knew. A patrol would move through our area, and days later, bombs would obliterate our headquarters. The answer was terrifying. They had been there, watching us, and we never knew. By 1970, the Australian SAS was the most requested special operations unit in Vietnam. The statistics spoke for themselves. In over 120 patrols, only one was ever wiped out. Their kill ratio was a staggering 100-1, but more importantly, the intelligence they gathered saved countless lives. The legacy was profound. When Sergeant Reg the Monk Wilson's patrol spent 12 days in the Nui Din Hills without speaking, they called in over 40 artillery strikes with pinpoint accuracy. That's what silence bought us, Wilson said. The ability to walk the target and put steel on it within 10 meters. The psychological cost, however, was immense. Veterans returned home with the silence etched into their souls. It took me months to sleep with any noise, said Corporal Jim Echo Hennessy. My wife would speak, and I'd freeze, scanning for threats. The silence changed how you saw the world. The fundamental lesson was learned the hard way by all who observed them. As Delta Force founder Colonel Charles Beckwith later noted, the Aussies proved that in guerrilla warfare, silence is a weapon as potent as firepower. Perhaps more so, because you can't shoot what you can't hear. They demonstrated that in the shadow war of intelligence, patience and discipline were more valuable than all the firepower in the world. The one weapon the North Vietnamese could never counter was the silence. They never learned to see the ghosts that moved within it. That single, critical failure dictated the terms of the shadow war, costing them hundreds of men and countless operations until the last SAS squadron departed in 1971. The ultimate testament to their effectiveness came not from an Allied general, but from the enemy himself. A former NVA officer, reflecting decades later, laid it bare. We could engage the Americans. We could ambush them, withstand their firepower. But the Australians, we could only hide. When the jungle went truly silent, we knew they were there, watching us from a void. In those moments, we were not soldiers. We were prey, left with nothing to do but wait, and hope the ghosts had other business that day.